you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You guys know what I want to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you fired up about my guest. Her name is Kimberly Joy Beam, and we're talking about her book, What the Doctors Don't Tell You, One Woman's Journey Through Hodgkin's Lymphoma. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Kimberly Joy. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I cannot wait to talk to you about your book. But as is tradition here, we always give an author an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps those few folks out there that may not be familiar with you or your work. So first question for you is, what makes you you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am, I'm a social worker who left teaching to become a social worker, and I'm a writer, and I also am now an app developer. I created a meditation app for teenagers called Zen for Teens.
Oh, I like that. That is so wonderful. I can't wait. I can't wait to kind of pick your brain a little bit about that as well. I love it. I love it. And, you know, it's really interesting that I find that with so many people, we are called, or we have been purposed during this time of our life's journey, that we may start off doing one particular thing, but if we are true to who we are, I think we end up doing exactly what we have been placed here to do. And it sounds like you kind of went along on that journey too, and look, now you're affecting so many more lives by simply following your heart. I love that. I love that. Now, speaking of following your heart, did you always want to be an author, or did you find that with the all that you have to share, that perhaps writing a book was one of the best ways to get your message out?
Oh, when I was little, I wanted to be like Jane Austen or Charlotte Bronte, and an English teacher. Those were the childhood dreams when I was like 15, 16, 17, I was like always with a notebook and always with a pen and always writing. Funnily, I don't think I finished many novels. It's just the true to life stuff that I've actually been able to write from beginning to end.
I can definitely understand that. It is quite curious how that all works out. I loved my English teacher, so you know, you guys are a great lot. I'm sure there's someone who disagrees that's going, I hated lit class. What are you talking about, Dr. Angela? But I loved my teachers, so hats off to all of you guys. I love it. Now, the title of your book, What the Doctors Don't Tell You, One Woman's Journey Through Hodgkin's Lymphoma. How did you determine that that was going to be the title of your book? Do you think that the title came to you first? Do you feel it kind of developed out of your writings? How did you come about the title?
I definitely think it came about through the writing. It's the trauma narrative of what it is to go through diagnosis and treatment of cancer, and the fact that like every step of the way you feel in the dark and lost. As much as you have God or faith or belief, like all of that, there's still a reliance on the medical professionals to tell you what you need to know. And some medical professionals will tell you a bunch, and some of them won't tell you anything. My oncologist flat out told me she didn't tell me everything, because if she did, she was afraid I wouldn't go through treatment. So she held information back that I discovered along the way because I lived through it, not because they hand it to you.
I have to agree with you. I know that with, and though our journeys are a little different, I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I know that I became obsessed with everything dealing with how to win when you have breast cancer. So I definitely understand what you mean by just tell it to me, just I don't want to be in the dark. Let me deal with it, especially if it's going to happen anyway.
Exactly. At one point I had the surgeon, so there was a surgeon who was like, they were trying to diagnose me and they couldn't get the diagnosis and they were like shoving needles into my chest and they were really close to my heart. It's all in the book. But like, they were like, he was supposed to go in and pull out the cartilage between two ribs in my upper breastplate. And he told me later that if he had done so, there's a possibility, this is kind of graphic, but there's a possibility that the skin would pull in when I breathe deeply and it gets very uncomfortable. And he goes, and people get really disturbed by that. And he's like, I'm really glad I didn't have to do that to you. And I looked at him and I was like, you mean I would have had something that disturbed me and made me feel really uncomfortable and you didn't tell me that before the surgery? He's like, well, does it matter? I don't need to tell you that before the surgery. He's like, it doesn't change the fact that you're having the surgery.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, okay.
Thankfully, the lymph node was just like, here, take me instead. And he was able to remove it. Like, he removed the lymph node from the collarbone and didn't actually have to remove the cartilage from the chest. Like, it was a decision that was made in surgery. I wasn't even awake for the process.
I tell you, the stories, and I cannot wait to find out a little bit more. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and say the disclaimer now, and my listeners already know what I'm going to say. She's not going to tell you, every bit and piece of the book. You have to buy the book to see, everything that's in there. But oh my goodness, I'm sure you guys have heard a story like that before, where you thought someone was probably putting extras on the story or they were being dramatic. Nope. Things like that really do happen. Now, let me ask you about, speaking of picking up a copy of the book, the proper way to read it. I know that for many authors, they will nice and neatly arrange the information, if you will, put it in chapters a certain way or, take you through a timeline so that you can follow along on the journey properly. We also know that there's going to be that person out there that wants to read the last page first to see, if they want to read the book or not, however that makes sense to them. With that being said, what is the best way to really follow your story? Should someone start at the very beginning? Can they choose some place to start according to the table of contents? What's the best way to read your book?
I would say, it's definitely written chronologically. Like, this is what happened, and then this is what happened, and then I go dose by dose. There were 8 doses, so I let you know what happens in each dose. And they were 2 weeks apart, and what happened in between, the spaces between. But I'll be honest, like, sometimes reading a story like this one, a true-to-life story, sometimes you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is just too much. Like, I can't, and you need to leave that and go find another section that feels more comfortable. You can't do that when you're living it, but if you can do that while reading it, I say go for it. So if you're in a section and you're like, I don't want to be reading this anymore and this is too intense, but you're like, I really want to read this chapter. I'm like, hey, if that's where you want to be, absolutely. Jump ship and go find something lighter.
And like you said, if only we could have done that in the moment, but we didn't have that option. It's like, you know what, Doc, we're going to pause here. Let's go ahead and zip on down to the end of the story. If only. But,
Good. Or can I just go get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea while all this other stuff is happening and I'll come back and join you all later?
That's right. If only. Oh my goodness. I love it. And I love how you're now able to have that part of your personality not be diminished or tainted in any way due to the various little hiccups along the way. I'll try to put it nicely, with the things that people did or didn't do or said or didn't say, that you were able to still kind of keep yourself along the way on that one. Now, speaking of the information, would you say that your book is appropriate for folks that have not gone through this? I know that when people share their real life stories, I always give the suggestion of, if you're going through it, if you love someone who's going through this, of course, pick up a copy of the book, because it will help you understand what either could go on in your life at some particular point, or at least it gives you a different perspective to help you better understand. But would you say that the book is also a good read for someone who is perhaps just curious, or they're not necessarily affected, but they're just looking for a really good book to read?
Well, absolutely. And I'll say at any point you're going to face a doctor, right? And I think I got into the brain a little bit about what it's like to be like the patient in the bed and how to ask the question, or how to think about the experience in a way so that whatever happens for you or a family member, you'll go in and be like, oh, right, like I need to be a little savvy on my end because Kim showed me what happens if you're not savvy enough to think about the things that you need to know. So I hope it would help anybody at any point just know how to maneuver the medical field a little bit more wisely.
Do you think that you learned about the treatment process while you were going through it? Do you feel that you really knew how you were going to be affected by each of the steps according to the literature that you were given, or according to the research that you were able to do on your own? Or did you still have to really kind of go through it in order to understand the all of what was happening?
So I'm going to be honest, I was one of those people, I'm one of those people that will find every side effect. And so I was like, I'm not going to read any literature, because if I do, I'm going to become psychosomatic. I'm going to start thinking I have things, like a hypochondriac. I'm going to think I'm going to have things and not. So I didn't read anything. I was I kind of went in blind, and I tried to stay blind because I was afraid that if you go to WebMD and you look up your symptoms, they tell you all the worst case scenarios. And I was I don't want even the negative in my head, because I want to survive, and I want the spirit to kick this. And if I have the negative in my head, am I going to be thinking negative? And I need to be positive. So I just didn't even read the literature. So everything I experienced was blind, the way you put it. I didn't do a lot of the work. I was I'm going to trust what they're telling me, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to do what they tell me to do, and I'm going to try and do it really well. But at the same point, there were things that I found out about my character. There were things I found out about the medical field. There were things I found out about chemotherapy. There were things I found out about what it takes to be cured that I had no idea. I mean, they would say things to me, and I would be okay, I'll keep that in mind. And then when it happened, I was oh, this is what they were talking about. And then to really be the one experiencing it, and to know my doctor never experienced it. My doctor has no idea what that feels like. Right. My doctor has no idea knows what it feels like. So my body rejected the port. My doctor has no idea what it feels like to know that your entire body is blood clotted up. She's never been there. She has no idea what that fear is. Yeah. So there's stuff that you just have to walk. You just have to that long night, dark night of the soul, right? You Job, you just got to walk through it yourself. Right? There's nobody else who can walk through it for you, unfortunately. And there were a lot of people who told me if I could walk this for you, I would. Right. But they can't.
But they can't. Right. No, I think that you made a really good point. And for the person who doesn't understand what we're talking about, women, we know that if we have a male OBGYN and he says you're going to feel a little pressure, how does he know? He doesn't know. That's just what the book has told him. That's what the text has told him. So that's what he says. So it's kind of the same thing. And that's why it's I understand to a certain degree of what you're saying, but I don't have your exact experience, so I'm still learning from you. And I think that that's what we all need to really do. I think it's wonderful that you're sharing the story, and you're so right. And even though someone else may also had to deal with Hodgkin's lymphoma, their story might even be a little bit different than yours, because we're all unique beings, So I have to agree with you there. Well, it is time for us to go to break, Kimberly Jo. But before we do, can you please remind everyone what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Absolutely. So the book is What the Doctors Don't Tell You, One Woman's Journey Through Hodgkin's Lymphoma. It's on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can find me at zen4teens.com. I'm at Instagram at zen4teens.com.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Chester. My guest today is Kimberly Jo Beam, and we're talking about her book, What the Doctors Don't Tell You, One Woman's Journey Through Hodgkin's Lymphoma. My next question for you is, and we kind of touched on it a little bit in the first half, but I want to give you a more opportunity to explain, and that is the why. Why did you write this book? You didn't have to share your story. You didn't have to describe all that you went through. You could have chosen to keep that very private, but why was it important to make sure that others were informed?
So I was done, and I was like through as I called it earlier, the long dark night of the soul. I realized I am not alone in this journey. Like I was alone in that I walked it alone, but there will be other people who have to walk a long dark night of the soul, whatever that happens to look like. And I know that my experience would be able to make them feel a little less alone on their journey, whatever that happens to look like, because we all have dark spaces we have to walk through. And so I decided to write. I also have to say, like, my heart of compassion and love, and it just expanded through being sick. It just grew. I've grown tremendously with a passion for people who struggle with both physical illness and mental illness, like anxiety, depression, like that kind of stuff. And so I wrote the book as like not as a guidebook, but more as a, like, you're not walking alone. And it's the same reason, like, when I came out of all of this, that I built the app for teenagers, that's the meditation app. I built it because I want to be able to give back and support people as they're struggling and as they're doing what they're doing, because, we feel really alone, but we're really not alone, because we're all human and we're all doing this thing called life together. And so I wrote the book to be like a support and a reminder that we're not by ourselves. Same reason I built the app Zen for Teens, because we're not alone.
You are so right there. We are not alone, and to know that, especially like you said, if you're someone who is having to go through this journey pretty much alone, it is nice to know that there's someone who cares. Someone who is praying for you, if you will, even if you've never met, but someone who is still wishing you well along the way. I love that. I love that. Now, what do you want for people to know who are struggling to become survivors? Is there any piece of inspiration or information that you want them to make sure that they understand having read your book?
It may look really dark where you are, but it doesn't stay dark. It doesn't. There is light, and there is hope, and there is reason to keep putting feet forward. There's a moment in the book that I describe where I tell my mom, I'm done. I'm not doing anymore. We're done. I'm not done with the doctors still tell me I have to do more doses. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing any more doses. And Mom was like, no, we're going to keep doing this thing. But when the going gets tough and you really feel like you want to give up, the end of the story isn't one that's like without hope, and it isn't without joy, and it isn't without change. I walked out of going through Hodgkin and its treatment and its all that it put me through, and I blossomed into a completely different person. I didn't know who that person was right away, but I was not the same, and I was an even better version of myself. It was like an upgrade, right? Like you have to like reinstall an app, or you have to like turn off your phone and reboot it, or you have to do that thing to your computer, or it has to shut down. I think I just needed to be shut down for a little while, like 4 months, and then like completely flattened, and then I came back as a completely different, loving, compassionate, non-judgmental person that I didn't even recognize.
I could not agree with you more. I think that moment happened for me when I had surgery, because I did chemo, surgery, and then radiation. And I explain it to people that we take for granted that we're going to wake up tomorrow. We take for granted that this surgery, that these treatments have been done before, and that you're going to come out okay. And though faith kept me going, and I think I hear you're saying the same thing, is that, of course, you know, we want to keep moving forward, but you do have those moments where you're like, you know what, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. This is making me sicker than I was. How is that possible? You're supposed to be curing me.
I wasn't even having any symptoms to start. Like, they were like, what symptoms do you have? I was like, I don't know, I have a really large lymph node inside my collarbone. Like, that's it. They're like, well, what about this? What about this? I'm like, nope, don't have any of those symptoms. Nope. And then they give me chemo, and I'm like, okay, now I'm dead. I'm just dead. Like,
absolutely. And you know, being able to talk to somebody about this, and it is so funny for someone who's going through this. You two will get to this point. When we were going through it, this was so not funny. This was, you know, I was in tears if I wasn't, you know, rocking in pain. You know, it was horrible. But now that you've gone through it, you can, especially with someone that you know understands what you've gone through, it's like, oh my goodness, how did we, you know, get through that? I know I had that moment when she put on those purple gloves, and then she put on another pair of purple gloves, and then she put on black gloves, and I said, oh my, why are you doing that? And she says, oh, this one is really strong. And I'm thinking, why are you giving that to me then?
But you're going to put that in my vein? Wait, you're going to put that in my vein? Right? Really? You can't touch it, but you're going to put it in my vein. Oh, okay.
But you're going to give it to me. Fine. This was doctor approved. Are you sure? Okay. So yes, I do understand. I really, really do. But you know, you said an important thing, and that is that support team. And I want to ask you really kind of quickly about that. For someone who may only, they haven't asked anyone to be a part of their support team, but they have some best friends that are listening to the show today, and they want to be that support team for their friend or for their loved one. What is one of the best things that they can do? Of course, it's no one size fits all, but what are some things that they can do to be a really good support team member?
Don't take no for an answer. So my mom's best friend, she's freaking amazing. She's a knitter, and she was a teacher, and she's a double mastectomy survivor, breast cancer survivor. Like, she knew what this was going to look like for me, and because she had gone through it a number of years before I did. And she showed up at my house one day and was like, okay, Kim, you're putting on clothes because right now you're in pajamas, so go find something else. And then she said, we're gonna go to the yarn store. Or one day she took me to Neiman Marcus. I was like, what do you mean we're going to, I can't even walk, Jane. You want me to go to Neiman Marcus? And she was like, yeah, we're going to Neiman Marcus. She's like, we're going to get valet parking, and we're going, and I need to find dishes for a wedding, and we're going to have lunch in their restaurant, and then we're going to come home. And I have to say, those 2 days, going to the yarn shop and going out to Neiman Marcus, were like, they were big events. They were exhausting. I felt like she didn't understand how tired I was. But at the same point, they made me feel a little human, even though I looked really sick. And everybody treated me with respect. Everybody made sure I was okay. I was worried that people would like jostle or bump into me and then I would fall. But everybody just like gave me space, and they supported me. And it was amazing. And some people don't want to leave the house, and there's some respect to have to that. But at some point, there's a point of like, you know what? Let's just go out to lunch. Let's just go out to lunch. We'll be out an hour, and then you'll be back. And if you're exhausted, you'll sleep. It'll be okay.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, it will. And you are so right. I remember the first day that I decided that I was going to unwrap my bald head and actually go outside with my bald head.
Oh,
and
that makes me cry just thinking about it. It was so hard.
Yeah, it's so incredibly hard. But isn't it so empowering once you're like, you know what? This is my head. I am alive. And today I'm going to rock my bald head. I don't care who's there. I don't care. No, I can't put makeup on and look better because this is just me right now. And I remember just going outside, and it was like, okay, you're starting to make that turn. Sister, I understand. And you are giving such great advice. I could not endorse a book more than yours, because I understand that in the rawness of it all, you are allowing someone to understand that life isn't always perfect and we have to go through these things, but we will be okay. And someone needs to know that they're going to be okay through this journey. And it is just so inspiring to hear you say that, and to be able to paint the picture. And even though, again, you're giving detail, but you're not making it frightening, you're just saying this is going to happen and you're going to be okay. Just be able to walk through it. I love it. I love it. Now, what do you... When you go to the doctor now, and this part I'm kind of asking the question as well. I know that for me, for the first 5 years, you're going to the doctor about every 6 months-ish, anywhere from 4 to 6 months to get, poked and prodded again. Now, with that being said, how long does that go on when you're dealing with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and how do you know, like, when you're making your benchmarks, other than the fact that you start to feel better and all of that? Are there any other things that you look forward to?
Absolutely. So I think it was the first 3 or 4 years I had to go. I think the first year it was every 4 months, and then it became every 6 months, and now it's every year I go back. At the 5-year mark, I was 5-year mark, I was considered cured. 5 or 7-year mark, I was considered cured. And the beauty about Hodgkin's is that once it's dead, it's dead. It'll never come back again. It's not something that, like, you have to worry about metastasizing on some other organ. It's done. It doesn't do something funky.
That's awesome.
It really is. They make the joke that if you have to, like, get cancer, you kind of want to get Hodgkin's, because it's the only one that they can, what they actually do, I found out, is they destroy every one of your lymph cells. So my lymph cells I might be 45 years old, but my lymph cells are 11 years old, because 11 years ago and when I was doing treatment.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, every year I have to go back. And, in fact, November 16th, if you want to think of me, Tuesday, I'll be going back and I'll be doing the, like, breathing and, like, all the deep breathing, all the meditation, all the, like, let me feel my feet inside my shoes, let me not flip out, let me not be really grumpy to whoever's riding me, right? Like, let me just, because I turn into a really terrible person on the day of this. Like, I am not kind necessarily, because every part and every cell in my being has a memory of what it's like to walk in this building and to be poked and prodded and chemoed and all of that other stuff. And so my body, like, shakes, and my oncologist told me that there's somebody that she knows that even, like, at 5 years out was throwing up on the elevator going up there because her body was like, we don't want to be here.
And you're telling the truth 1,000%. I am triggered by hand sanitizer. that hospital hand sanitizer, somebody please buy a different brand. You are traumatizing people. Every time they go back and it's just like, do you want hand sanitizer? I have my own. No. And it's true. It really and truly is true. And the closer you are to that date, you know, the more I believe, just the more easily you're triggered. I'm almost 12 years cancer free. So my perspective on that is a little bit different now, thank God. But no, you're not lying. I totally believe her that she's triggered that way. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're not joking about the hand sanitizer. Like even being called back to do the IV thing, and they pull out that blue or orange tourniquet that they wrap around your arm, and it's got that smell to it.
It's smell to it, like powdery stuff that's on it or whatever. It's like,
get that rubber thing away from me. I don't want it anywhere near my arm, please. Thank you. Like, there's so much about that day that is like triggering for all the memories. And then they ask you, are you getting treatment today? And there's a part of you that goes, oh, God, am I getting treatment?
Am I getting treatment? Why? Did you find something? Are you telling me something that no one else told me? Have you spoken to my doctor? Should I be nervous right now? Your blood pressure is a little elevated. I wonder why.
Yeah, my blood pressure is normally down like 110/70/80, right? It's really low. Like, I get to the hospital, I'm like 120/90.
What's going on? Nothing. I'm just nervous.
So here's a story. Last year I had to drive myself because of like the pandemic. Nobody could go with me, right? So I had to drive myself. First time ever I drove myself down there. I get a flat tire on the way. Wow. My blood pressure was so high. All I could think the entire time is, one, I don't want to be here, and two, how do I get AAA into the garage to like change my tires for me?
Absolutely. It's like, wow, today? Are you serious? This has to happen today.
Yes, exactly. Today has to be the day I get a flat tire. Really? Honestly, this is the day. Okay. Okay.
Right, it's like, dear God, please get me through this moment. Just get me through this moment. I hear you. Oh my gosh. Now, I want to ask you, we have about a minute left, and I'm so sorry that I only have this much time to ask this question, but you talk about post-cancer stress disorder in your book. Why was it important to include that section in your book as well?
Well, it's part of the mental health of, like, the triggering, right? It's part of the, like, you go back and the shaking and all the stuff that we've been talking about just now about how hard it is to go back just to get your checkup, right? You said hand sanitizer triggers you. It totally does. It does me too. So post-traumatic, like, stress disorder is believing that you had an event where you could die, right? And that's what causes PTSD. You have an event. Actually, I don't even think it's D. You're not disordered. You just have a natural reaction to an abnormal circumstance. So it's post-traumatic stress. You're not disordered. You just have post-traumatic stress because you lived through something that's terrible and you recognize that you could die in it. And then it comes back up and you, like, can't do certain things because it's just too hard. So it's important, like, your body and your brain have to process this in some way, and it takes a little while to come out of that. And that's sort of like one of the many reasons I built Zen for Teens, because teenagers have lots of stuff that happens to them, and they have to process it somehow. And I want to be able to support them because I know how rough it is to, like, go through something and then have this, like, on the other side where your doctor nods her head and says, oh, yeah, post-traumatic cancer disorder, totally a thing. And you're like, well, what do I do now? And thank goodness I found what I found in order to be able to support myself, and the anxiety that came after, because I had anxiety before, and then it came back with, like, a vengeance after the cancer, because post-traumatic stress is a thing. And so Zen for Teens is a way to support the community, whoever wants to be a part of it, to find a space to have a place to be a little bit more relaxed and human with your humanness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kimberly Joy Beam, I have enjoyed talking to you, and I think that today, of all days, when I say I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered, I think that we have that. Even though we have laughed about some things that are really serious, I think it's also given people permission to understand that they too will get to this point, that it doesn't stay the dark, cold place that it starts out, or the journey that we have to go through, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I have so enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you for sharing your story, for being mindful enough to think about others who are going to be affected, and creating a place for them to go where they can be safe and that they can just be themselves and not be judged in that moment. You're doing some awesome stuff, and thank you for doing that. Now, before I let you go, though, one last time, can you remind everyone what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, folks want to know, like, are you on Facebook, Twitter? Give us all your social media.
Okay. So my book is What the Doctors Don't Tell You, One Woman's Journey Through Hodgkin's Lymphoma. It's available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. You can find me at zenforteens.com. I'm at Instagram at zenforteens, and I'm on Facebook at Kimberly Beam.
I love it. Thank you again for being a guest on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it here with us today, and I thank you for doing that. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Tester. You guys know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And we want you fired up about my guest. Her name is Shakira Wilkerson, and we're talking about her book, Momma, I Love You. So you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, Shakira. Thank you so much for joining me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Hello, Dr. Angela. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I cannot wait to talk to you about your book, but folks know the tradition around here, and that is we give every guest an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps those few folks out there that may be unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What makes you, you?
Thank you. What makes me just a teacher assistant, love children, and just love writing books. That makes me unique.
I like that answer. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life presented the opportunity?
I always wanted to be an author since I was a little girl. I just love writing, whether it's music, stories, poems. I just love writing.
I find that so many of the authors that I speak with, that this is a passion, be it that it was something that they are aware of, from a very early age, or something kind of prompted them to start writing, and now it's, oh yeah, I've been bitten by the writer's bug. You can't get me to stop writing. So I love it. I love it. Now, the title of your book, Momma, I Love You. Now, I think most people can nod their heads and say, yep, we agree with you. Mamas out there of the world, we love you. With that being said, how did you come up with this title for your book?
Yes, thank you. Well, I always start, like writing, but God gave me the idea, just to write about mothers and the love for their children. And my mother loved all three of her children, and that was also a great example to write about, too.
Now, when you were in the writing process, like, when you were still putting it all together, did you find that you needed to separate yourself out? Like, did you need to remove yourself from the hustle and bustle of the day in order to really hear yourself think so that you could write properly? I know some people do. Others, doesn't matter if there's, life going on around them. Did you have that need to have to separate yourself out?
Yes. Usually, like from after the job, working with children all day, I have to get in a quiet place, and I like to put on smooth jazz, and I just listen and let the Lord speak to me. Then I just start writing. So I love to be in a quiet place just to write, stories.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, I don't think people really appreciate the power of silence until they need to be in a quiet place, right? It is so beautiful nowadays to sometimes just sit quietly and just hear nothing, just to hear the breeze go by or just the silence of the room. You are so right there. Now, for so many of the authors that I've spoken with, they have experienced a prompting or an urging, if you will, when it comes to being an author. Did you have any such prompting? Did you feel that God was calling you to start writing? Were you nudged in any way?
Yes, Dr. Angela. I was even starting in 2013 when I first wrote my first book. I was just nudged by God to write a book for young girls. Then the nudge became again this year by writing a book for mothers and their children. So it was just God directing me and pointing me to go ahead and write. There is something about that prompting when God really tells you or reveals to you that it's time to do something. I call those moments my God downloads, right, where you get the information, you know exactly what you're supposed to do, and it usually turns out to be just an amazing thing because it's in His timing. I love that. I love that. Now, for someone who has always enjoyed writing, at what age did you realize that, you know what, my words have power? For some folks, it's, in middle school, others perhaps it may be even high school when they realize that not only does the spoken word, but the written word can affect people's lives as well. When did you have that realization? My realization started in elementary when I was writing a song for English class, and my teacher, she loved it. She was like, "Wow, you're already writing already? You haven't even hit middle school." So I would say it started elementary.
And see, it is so interesting, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I have spoken with people, not necessarily authors, but I've spoken with folks that are orators, they're speakers, or they're ministers or pastors, and many have had an experience much like yourself, where they were little kids, they were elementary age kids, and they were 5 or 6, sharing the gospel. They were, preaching little children's sermons, if you will. And it's like there are just some folks that know that soon. So that is awesome. That's awesome. Now, as far as this book is concerned, Mama, I Love You, did you have an ideal reader in mind? Like, is this just for women? Are young girls able to read your book and understand as well?
Yes, it's for all ages, for mothers, children, young women, just for anyone that, love their mother and want to show adoration to them. It's just for about love, because we all need love in the world. So the mother is the greatest love to show. That's the greatest example.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when it comes to reading your book properly, for many authors, they will kind of help the reader along, and they will kind of
plan it out for us. They'll give us chapters or sections or topics or themes to help get us from page first to page last. What is the best way to read your book? Should we do it cover to cover, like simply page after page? Should we try to do kind of like a section at a time, or more like a devotional where we read a few pages and put it down? What's the best to utilize your book?
It would just be from page to page. It's just an easy reader, and the book is not quite long. It's just a great topic on, mothers and just love, and just a page-to-page book.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. Now, my next question for you is, with your book being a children's book, is this the type of book where you expect for to read it themselves? Should it be read to them, like an older sibling story time? How did you set up the book from that perspective?
The children's book is quite, an older sibling could read it. It also could be an easy reader for an individual, a child that's, great in reading. They can read it on their own. It also can be for any time, whether day or night, or a bedtime story where the mother can read to their child. So it's just many ways that the individuals can use the book to read.
Oh, I like that. And I know that for many families that have that older sibling, what a great way for the older sibling to practice their reading, but still have that bonding time, have some time with their younger sibling. So I do like that aspect of that. That's awesome. Now, when it comes to, for children's book authors, you guys definitely have a special place in my heart because you're thinking about things for the perspective of a child. How can I write this so that they can not only be entertained, but there's a bit of educating that goes on as well. But there's the process of not just writing the book, but also determining how it should be illustrated. The next question I have for you is about the illustrations. With children's book authors, you guys have the additional task of you hold in your mind's eye what you think the book is going to look like, but you have to be able to, articulate that to your illustrator, and you guys have to collab on the vision of the book. What was that process like? How did you determine who was going to be the right person and how the book should look?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just prayed about it, asked God, show me the directions of who and how to do it, and God gave me the directions. Then I just spoke with the illustrator, how I wanted the colors, the picture, and also the idea from the story. So it worked really well together, God, and then just collaborating together.
Because I know for some authors, they're handy dandy with the pen. So, they say, oh yeah, we did the pictures ourselves, and other folks are like, oh, Dr. Angela, you definitely wouldn't want me to draw the pictures. We had to use a professional. So I like to ask that question of each of you. Now, when it comes to holding your finished work in your hands, how did you feel in that moment? Like you are holding copy number 1. What was that like?
I just felt so excited, accomplished, and just grateful that, God allowed me to use this gift and talent to be able to share with others. So really excited.
Absolutely. I can definitely understand that. Well, Shakira, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes. The book is Momma, I Love You. It's on Amazon, wherever books are sold. And you can reach me at Facebook, Shakira Wilkerson.
Alrighty, everyone. Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchchester. My guest today is Shakira Wilkerson, and we're talking about her book, Momma, I Love You. Now, I want to ask you a little bit about the book. Now, my listeners know that I always give the disclaimer. We're not going to tell you, how the story ends. You have to buy the book for that. But can you tell us a little bit about the storyline of your book?
A mother, spending time with her child. They do different special activities, but you have to wait till the end to see what are some of the things that they do together.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were setting up the personalities of the people of the characters in the book, how did you determine what type of character, what type of personalities you wanted to give to them?
The character I kind of picked from would be from my mother, and that's the mother in the book, and also the daughter would be probably myself, and the other little girls which look up to their mothers. So I kind of took those personalities and put them together.
Mm-hmm. I remember somebody asking Tyler Perry, how did he come up with the character of Medea? And he said, oh my goodness, it's a little bit of my mother, it's a little bit of my aunties, and the church folks and the church ladies and all of that. And it's really interesting how we do that. We take little bits and pieces of folks, and then they end up being one really amazing character. So I could definitely see the inspiration there. Now, what do you hope that I want to say the reader of the book, even though we know that this is for a little person. So what do you hope that little person understands having listened to your book? Or flip side of the coin, what do you hope the parent is able to share with their little one having read the book to their little one?
Well, I hope that, the children, that they will adore and, love their mother. And from the parent side, that just spending time, with their child, because when we have one life to live, and every day is not promised. Those small moments, those memories, they make a beautiful, beautiful time together in years forever. So I just hope that they take that and just keep that in their heart.
I like that answer. Absolutely. It's nothing like that bond between parent and child. And you do have to foster that. You have to do things to really make sure that happens. So that is so true. Now, what was let me ask a different way. Have you ever had a quote that really inspired you to keep moving forward, especially as an author, something that perhaps someone else's words have inspired you to keep doing what you're doing?
Yes, one of my favorite quotes is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ Jesus. That's helped me, through rough storms, hard times, positive, anything. So that's my greatest quote. I really enjoy that one.
I think that we all definitely need a quote, a scripture, a verse, or something to help keep us going and moving forward. I know that for some folks, it's like even if we have a sacred reading, it could be something that a missionary has said, something that a pastor or a priest has said that really resonates with us, and it keeps us going. So thank you so much for sharing that scripture. Now, what do you think is one of the most important books that you have ever read that has really, inspired you? So you have now written a book that's going to inspire the next generation. But was there a book that perhaps inspired you when you were a little kid?
Wow, there was numerous ones when I was a little kid, but as an adult now, I would say would be like inspirational books or the Bible. Those are the most important books that helped shape my life and form me to the young woman that I am today.
Now, I know that the pandemic has either thrown everyone off course, and they have really had to figure out what they were going to do to keep their livelihood. Others have been able to take this time to really kind of focus on what is their purpose in life, and are they actually walking in their purpose? As many of the authors that I have spoken with, they're like, oh, Dr. Angela, I have definitely used this time to write, because it's easy, because I'm already home, right? And just utilizing that time and not letting that time go by and be wasted. So that's my question to you. How have you been affected by the pandemic? Have you been able to utilize some of the time in a way that you've been able to continue to write even more?
Well, since I work with children, even though we've been affected by COVID, I still work with children. I think it goes hand in hand with me writing when I'm home in that quiet place, and I could get the minds of the children since I work with them, kindergartners. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Absolutely. And that's right. When we're talking about little people, there are some folks that it didn't matter if it was COVID Monday or COVID Tuesday. They still had to go to work. So you are so right there. And I'm kind of with you there. It did not matter. I still had to show up every single day. Though I was able to work from home. You're right. Where I was working from may have changed, but work never stopped. So you are so right. I love it. Now, my next question for you is, and even though we are on Christian Talk Radio, I never want to assume anything for anyone or not give someone an opportunity to share something that God has placed on their heart. So I like to ask it this way. Do you believe that your faith has helped create the person that you are today? So I'm not asking, did you go to church on Sunday or did you do Bible study on Wednesday? But more so just that personal relationship that you have with God. Do you think that has helped create you into the person that you are now?
Yes, it has created that, because I remember a time when I was going through and my faith was kind of weak, praying and reading the Word and Scriptures and having those, inspirational help me to get closer to God, to get closer to seek His face. And the more I did that, the more He kept pouring in His Word to me and His promises, what He want me to do and what He want me to accomplish. So yes.
I love it. And it is always a good day when we understand what God wants us to do and being able to just spend time with God and knowing that we're doing what He has called us to do. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Shakira Wilkerson, thank you so much for spending time with me here today on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And before I let you go, though, can you remind everyone, please, one last time, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, thank you. Once again, it's Momma, I Love You. It's on Amazon and wherever books are sold. And you can find me on Facebook, Shakira Wilkerson. Thank you.
Thank you again for being a guest on the show. And listeners, thank you for spending time with us here as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend some time with me today, and I thank you for doing so. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.